Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Our big focus this hour, Donald Trump's 20-point Gaza proposal is all set to be put into motion, with Hamas accepting parts of the plan. Hamas said it was ready to start immediate talks on the end of the Gaza war. Trump has also welcomed the Hamas statement, saying they are ready for a lasting peace. Netanyahu too has said that Israel is prepared to implement the first stage of Trump's plan. Let's in fact take you through this comprehensive peace plan proposed by the American president. What are the parameters that the US president has set out in this peace plan for Gaza? So first, they say that Gaza will be a de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. That's the first big point mooted in this plan. Also, Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of people of the region of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed-upon line to prepare for a hostage release. That's also something mandated by this plan. Also, within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting this agreement, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Once all hostages are released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners, plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after those attacks, of course, remember, in Israel in October, of course, those horrific assault that Hamas had done, which caused this war in the first place. Also, once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. So that's also something set aside. Once upon acceptance of this agreement, full aid will also be immediately sent into the Gaza Strip, is what the plan also envisages. Meanwhile, there will be entry of distribution and aid in the Gaza Strip that will proceed without interference from the two parties through the United Nations and its agencies. Meanwhile, also Gaza will be governed then post this ceasefire under the temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee. Meanwhile, Trump's economic development plan also seeks to rebuild and energize Gaza, which will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracle cities. That's something also being mooted as per this plan. A special economic zone will also be established with preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiated with participating countries. Meanwhile, also a special economic zone will be in fact, no one will be forced to leave Gaza. Those who wish to leave will also be free to do so and free to return as well. Also, Hamas and other factions have agreed to not have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. That's also something that this plan envisages for the role of Hamas, which will be which will be negligible. Meanwhile, also the guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and the factions comply with their obligations and that New Gaza poses no threat to anyone. The United States will work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force to immediately deploy in Gaza as well. That will, of course, be done for the security of the region. Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. That has also been mandated by this plan. Meanwhile, in the event Hamas delays or rejects this proposal, the above, including the sealed up aid operation, will proceed in the terror-free areas handed over from the IDF to the ISF. Also, an interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence as well. And the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which in fact recognize as the aspirations of the Palestinian people. And finally, The final point in this peace plan, the United States will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful and prosperous coexistence. So that is the peace plan that, of course, was proposed by the United States President, has been accepted by Israel, has now got a conditional yes from Hamas, and as we know, Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza has been accepted by the Israeli Prime Minister. Hamas now has agreed to release the remaining hostages, but it has sought further negotiations on a number of points. We'll be going through this plan point by point. The first point, of course, states that Gaza will become a terror-free zone, with Hamas withdrawing fighters and handing over all weapons and artillery. Obviously, this is a point. Andrew Latham, Professor of International Relations, who's live with us from Minneapolis, if I can rope you in here. This is a point that Israel, of course, was happy with. Will Hamas accept this point as well, is the big question. Let's discuss this in detail. Andrew Latham.
The optimism of the will maybe triumphs over the pessimism of the spirit here. I was remotely involved in the Northern Ireland peace process way back in the day when disarming the Irish Republican Army was a big deal. And it's going to be a big deal here. One level politically, why in the world would Hamas give up one of its only two levers of power? The hostages are one, and its armed strength is another. And even if it agreed, nominally, declaratory, agreed to this, how is that going to be verified? Are there going to be international inspectors on the ground checking everybody's basement to make sure there's no AK-47s? So it sounds simple, and on paper, it is pretty straightforward. In practice, even if Hamas, and that's a big if, even if Hamas agrees to this, verifying it over time will be incredibly challenging.
Now, the second point in the plan that we are focusing on is on Gaza's future, envisioning redevelopment to uplift the people who have endured immense hardship. The plan focuses on a comprehensive redevelopment, prioritizing the well-being and prosperity of the people of Gaza through targeted rebuilding efforts. This is obviously a point in the plan that Gazans are particularly happy over. Their reactions have also been coming in. Andrew.
Yes, I mean, that's a very positive development. A relatively small chunk of land that, unless there's a conflict going on there, most of the world pays no attention to. And now the world is going to pay attention to in terms of investment, in terms of development projects, in terms of lifting the Gazans, the Palestinians who live in Gaza, out of the misery and the poverty which they have been forced to endure for a long, long time now, perhaps forever. That's got to be heartening to the Palestinian, the broad Palestinian population in Gaza and beyond. So I count that as a positive. Again, the devil, as it were, is in the details. What does the plan look like? Will people actually deliver? Will the investment funds be forthcoming, etc.? But the mere fact that it is on the list of things to do, and that President Trump and others around the region, around the world are serious about this, is a very positive sign.
Absolutely. In fact, the next point focuses on Israel's commitment to withdraw its forces to an agreed-upon line. All military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will cease with battle lines frozen until specific conditions have been met. This is, of course, a significant point, a point that Hamas would certainly welcome, isn't it, Andrew Latham, which would perhaps be part of the reason why they have given a conditional yes to this peace plan.
Win clause, I think, or item. On the one hand, Hamas clearly wants the Israeli Defense Forces to withdraw from Gaza. It doesn't want any Israeli military or political presence in the Strip. And so if this happens, it's a win for Hamas, but it's also a win for Israel. Israel has a conscript army, and this is the longest war they've ever fought. And that is having hugely disruptive effects on their economy, on their society more broadly. Israel would love for the conditions to exist that would allow it to withdraw the IDF from active duty operations in the Strip. So if this agreement results in that, Hamas can chalk up a win, but Israel can chalk up a win as well.
Yes. Point 4 of the peace plan states that following Israel's acceptance of this agreement, all hostages alive and deceased will be returned The peace plan is contingent on their acceptance, so this is a key challenge, as Hamas has previously agreed but later reneged on similar hostage release deals. The big question is, they have agreed to this, Andrew. Will it actually happen on ground?
They have agreed to this, and that's a very positive sign. Now, again, delivering is going to be problematic. Not too long ago, a week or so back, I put it down to the fog of war that the Hamas leadership had lost track of some of these hostages. And so whether that was them simply obfuscating or whether that was a true or a real thing, that they simply didn't know where some of these hostages were. If you don't know where they are, it's hard to deliver them. Though, this is bottom line, absolutely non-negotiable for the Netanyahu government. Israelis are divided on this war, but they're not divided on the hostage question. So getting those hostages back, dead or alive, as it were, if that happens, then that's a win on the Israeli side.
Okay. And now, moving on to the fifth point of the peace plan, it details once all hostages are released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after 7 October 2023, including all women and children detained in that context. For every Israeli hostage whose remains are released, Israel will also release the remains of 15 deceased Gazans. So a swap has been mandated in the peace plan as well. That is something that perhaps will be accepted by both sides, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, this has been a feature of similar deals between Israel and various Palestinian factions in the past. A relative handful of Israelis swapped for a large number of Palestinians. And so there's some continuity here with past peace processes and past negotiations. I think it is a win for both sides, a qualified win. Israel is going to release not the 1,700 detainees, but there's some hardcore criminals who are going to be released from Israeli prisons as a result of this deal. So that's, on the one hand, it's a price worth paying. On the other hand, there is a price. And on the Hamas side, again, leverage. They're giving up one of the key levers of power in these negotiations and in this Hamas-Israel relationship, and that is these hostages. So again, a win, but a qualified win, a win with a price to pay, a real price to pay.
Also, point number 6 in this peace plan states that once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. However, a challenge arises as Hamas may demand significant demilitarization of Israeli forces in return. So this is a slightly contentious point, Andrew. What do you make of it?
This is a contentious point, and obviously it's a sop to Hamas that if you want to retire, as it were, from the battle, there are some off ramps for you. We can either give you amnesty and you can continue life in the Strip, or we can give you amnesty and you can migrate somewhere else in the world that's willing to host you. From the Israeli side, that makes some sense to the extent that you can bleed out some of the bad guys from an Israeli perspective, and they can go elsewhere or at least leave the battlefield. That's a plus. On the other hand, I think many Israelis would say that justice demands that some of these people be held accountable for what Israelis perceive to be their crimes. And they should be spending their retirement, as it were, in Israeli prisons, not on the Riviera or in some nice Qatari resort. Contentious, we'll have to see how that works out. But if it does work out, I think a big win on the Hamas side.
Absolutely. Well, meanwhile, on the 7th point of the Gaza peace plan, upon acceptance of this agreement, it is said full aid will be immediately sent into the Gaza Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in the 19th January 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, including rehabilitation of infrastructure, which includes water, electricity, sewage, rehabilitation of hospitals and bakeries, entry of necessary equipment to remove rubble, and open roads. This obviously is the need of the hour for Gazans, Andrew.
Yeah, and we can see with this particular item how the items are all interconnected. It's one thing for Israel to agree to humanitarian aid being delivered to the Gaza Strip. They've agreed to that, and I think most Israelis wouldn't have an issue with that. The problem from the Israeli perspective is that Hamas has often commandeered or hijacked or stolen this aid and used it for its own purposes to control the Palestinian population there. It's not as black and white as that. It's not as clean cut as that. But that's my point. The point is, it's a pretty fuzzy picture. If Hamas is disarmed and if it has no future role in the governance of the Strip, and if there is a viable, workable international supervisory body working with a technocratic governance structure made up of Palestinians, and there's relative peace in the Strip, then by all means, flood it with humanitarian aid until the rebuilding takes place, and then the Palestinians, perhaps as part of a global economy, can take care of themselves. But from a humanitarian perspective, an absolute win for humanity and for the Palestinians. Again, the devil can be in the details. It remains to be seen if this actually can happen.
All right, now point 8 of the agreement states that entry of distribution and aid in the Gaza Strip will proceed without interference from the two parties to the United Nations and its agencies, and the Red Crescent, in addition to other international institutions not associated in any manner with either party, opening the Rafah crossing in both directions will be subject to the same mechanism implemented under 19 January 2025 agreement. Now, this is a key crossing as well. Why do you believe this point was included in the peace plan?
Well, it's of a piece with the preceding point. Building on the January 19th agreements, with which all parties agreed to, obviously, perhaps more importantly, it simply signals. Well, let me back up and say this: UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which had been doing much of this work since 1967, had been totally captured by Hamas and the Palestinian movement more broadly. And it was not what it was meant to be, which was a neutral agency delivering aid in a neutral way. It became a handmaiden, as it were, of Hamas. That cannot be allowed to happen again with this new constellation of organizations, aid organizations, etc., to the extent that they can actually do what they're charged with doing, which is deliver the aid neutrally and without serving the interests of Hamas or a successor Palestinian resistance movement. That will be a positive thing for Gazans and for Israel.
Now, the 9th point of the peace plan, in fact, states that Gaza will be governed under the temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of public services and municipalities for the people in Gaza. This committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts with oversight and supervision by a new international transitional body, the Board of Peace, which will be headed and chaired by President Donald J. Trump, with other members and heads of state to be included, including former Prime Minister Tony Blair. This body will set the framework and handle the funding for the redevelopment of Gaza until such time as the Palestinian Authority has completed its reform program as outlined in various proposals, including President Trump's peace plan in 2020 and the Saudi-French proposal, and can securely and effectively take back control of Gaza. This body will call on best international standards to create modern and efficient governance that serves the people of Gaza and is conducive to attracting investment. Now, this would be a very unique body if it indeed were agreed to and actually be formed. Andrew.
Well, it kind of sounds like the original British mandate in some respects. You've got a non-Indigenous political supervisory committee or a board that is meant to be above the fray. That is almost never the case, but relatively speaking, obviously. I have my doubts about some of the people on that international supervisory board, former prime ministers and current presidents of the United States included. But in principle, the two elements of this, I think, make sense to me. On the one hand, a bipartisan, if it happens this way, a bipartisan, neutral international supervisory board. That makes sense. And then a depoliticized, technocratic Palestinian government that delivers the goods, supervised by that board. That makes sense on paper. Again, the practicalities, one wonders. The people matter. Tony Blair, Donald J. Trump. And the idea that one can have a neutral, technocratic governance organization in a highly politicized milieu I have my doubts, my reservations, but fingers crossed. If it works, both sides win.
Yes, in fact, the point 10, meanwhile, of this plan introduces a Trump economic development plan to rebuild and energize Gaza, which will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracle cities in the Middle East. Many thoughtful investment proposals and exciting development ideas have been crafted by well-meaning international groups and will be considered to synthesize the security and governance frameworks to attract and facilitate these investments that will create jobs, opportunity, and hope for future for Gaza. Will this be also something that Gazans would be happy about, this point, Andrew?
Well, my first reflex is to say one would have to ask the Gazan people what they think of this. Were I living there and the promises that were being made were delivered on, I would be happy. Now, there's going to be political debates about what constitutes development. Do we want gigantic golf courses and all the rest of it? Do we want something a little more meaningful? What's the flow back to the Gazan population if you build this facility or you undertake that development program, et cetera, et cetera? Who's really benefiting? Who's winning? Properly done with the interests of the Gazan population at heart, this could be a real win. Done the way it most likely will be done, the Gazan people will get some benefits, but not all. And worst case scenario, this will be an opportunity for the international investor class to make a lot of money at the expense of the Gazan population. I don't think that will happen, but somewhere along that continuum is where we're likely to end up.
All right. Meanwhile, in the 11th point of the Gaza peace plan, it's been proposed that transforming Gaza into a special economic zone, offering preferred tariff rates and access to participating nations, while inviting global industries to invest and foster economic growth in the region. This will also be negotiated with participating countries. Also, another point in the peace plan ensures freedom for Gaza's residents to shape their own future. The people of Gaza will have the freedom of making their own choices. No one will be forced to leave, and those who choose to stay or go will have that right respected, with special encouragement packages offered to create new opportunities and improve lives within Gaza. And point 13 of the plan states that Hamas and other factions will agree to not have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. All military, terror, and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapon production facilities, will also be destroyed and not rebuilt. There will be a process of demilitarization of Gaza under the supervision of independent monitors, which will include placing weapons permanently beyond through an agreed process of decommissioning and supported by an internationally funded buyback and reintegration program, all verified by the independent monitors. New Gaza will be fully committed to building a prosperous economy and to peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. Now, while the points on, of course, the prosperous future, the special economic zones and the tariffs may be acceptable, this point on the demilitarization and absence of Hamas and future governance could perhaps hamper the negotiations, do you believe, Andrew, or not quite?
Well, yes, because it's existential. It's an existential question for Hamas. Are they going to voluntarily consign themselves to the dustbin of history, which is what this entire agreement is about? Or are they going to nod and genuflect in the direction of agreeing but not really agree? As we've been having this conversation and as Tony Blair's name popped up, a thought occurred. Does the future of the Strip look more like Northern Ireland or more like Southern Lebanon, where a deal was done a long time ago about disarmament and about getting Hezbollah out of governance, et cetera, et cetera? None of it ever happened. And the UN, which is the International Stabilization Force, has done absolutely nothing to stabilize southern Lebanon in its entire history. Whereas, if you look at the Northern Ireland situation, the Republican and loyalist militants were disarmed, verifiably so. They both got to participate in government afterwards, to the more or less satisfaction of both communities. And we've had no bombs and no guns in Northern Ireland now for 30 plus years. One might credit Tony Blair for this. I might suggest that it was in spite of Tony Blair, but in any case, he had a hand in it. So what does the future of the Strip look like? Does it look more like Northern Ireland, peaceful, disarmed,
Right.
sort of a functioning democracy? Or does it look more like Lebanon, which is the antithesis of all those things?
Okay. Well, moving on now to point number 14 of the Trump-Gaza peace plan. It establishes a robust no-threat guarantee for Israel, secured by Gaza and its regional neighbors. This commitment ensures that no attacks on Israel will originate from Gaza, Iran, or its proxies in the region, fostering a secure environment for all parties by building trust and stability. This step aims to create a foundation for lasting peace as well as cooperation across the region. It also ensures that new Gaza poses no threat to its neighbors or its people. Meanwhile, in point number 15 of the plan, the US will work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force to immediately deploy in Gaza. The ISF will train and provide support to vetted Palestinian police forces in Gaza and will consult with Jordan and Egypt, who have extensive experience in this field. This force will be the long-term internal security solution. The ISF will work with Israel and Egypt to help secure border areas, along with newly trained Palestinian police forces. It's critical to prevent munitions from entering Gaza and to facilitate the rapid and secure flow of goods and rebuild for revitalizing Gaza. A de-conflict mechanism will also be agreed upon by parties. Meanwhile, point number 16 of the plan states that Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. As the ISF establishes control and stability, the Israel Defense Forces will withdraw based on standards, milestones and timeframes linked to demilitarizations that will be agreed upon between the IDF, ISF, the guarantors and the United States, with the objective of a secure Gaza that no longer poses a threat to Israel, Egypt or its citizens. Practically, the IDF will progressively hand over the Gaza authority it occupies to the ISF according to an agreement they will make with the transitional authority until they are withdrawn completely from Gaza, save for a security perimeter presence that will remain until Gaza is properly secure from any resurgent terror threat. Ali Mohammed Abu Shpak, independent Palestinian researcher, is also live with us on this story from Cairo, Egypt. Ali, what do you make of these points of the Gaza peace plan?
Thank you for having me. The thing is, there is a several of unclear idea about these points, especially who's the forces will rule Gaza. Is they are, expecting Abu Shabab that who's cooperating with Israel in Gaza and who's has an infamous name in Gaza, who will rule Gaza or whom? First point. Second point, it's about the democracy. It's about the new Gaza. They are mentioning there is a no annex for Gaza, but there is no mentioning about West Bank. It's like the whole issue, it's only Gaza. We are fighting for self-determination. It's like dehumanizing the civilians in Gaza, dehumanizing the Palestinians' ability, as there is no mention for Palestinian statehood. This is a one point. And second things also, it's about the forces who will come to rule Gaza. If there is Palestinian will not decide. We are talking about democracy. You are talking about the new ruling of Gaza. Who will decide who will rule them? According to the democracy, it should be an election as according to democracy process. But there is no election. They will select who will rule Gaza according to them, like-minded to be as cooperating with Israel. Worth mentioning that it's West Bank. The Palestinian Authority, one of the moderating body in Palestine, who is adopting the peaceful protest or peaceful resistance against the Israelis occupation. Still, Israel is not satisfied with its rule in West Bank, while there is no Hamas exist in West Bank and in Jerusalem. Is Jerusalem?
Yes.
But the main point here is. It's look like you are, doesn't give a Palestinians who's in Gaza to decide who's ruling them. It doesn't give them a choice as a democratic country. Let us bring here in 2003 when America invaded Iraq and they said we are coming to bring democracy. But look at the Iraq situation nowadays after Saddam's
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've run out of time, I'm afraid. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this broadcast. Now, point 17, meanwhile, in this plan, if I can also elaborate further, warns that if Hamas rejects the peace plan, the IDF will escalate operations. Any areas that are taken will be handed over to the International Stabilization Force to ensure security and stability. So, in the event Hamas delays or rejects this proposal, everything just mentioned, including the scaled-up aid operation, will proceed in the terror-free areas handed over from the IDF to the ISF. Moving on to point number 18 in the plan, it states that an interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to try and change mindsets and narratives of Palestinians and Israelis by emphasizing the benefits that can be derived from peace. It promotes reconciliation by establishing this interfaith dialogue process in order to build lasting peace. Also, point 19 of the peace plan states that while Gaza redevelopment advances and when the PA reform program is faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. This point positions Gaza's redevelopment as a critical step towards Palestinian self-determination, laying the groundwork for a pathway to Palestinian statehood in the future. Coming to the final point of the peace plan, it establishes a US-facilitated dialogue platform to address long-term issues between Israel and Palestine. So the United States will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon, which is something that will help foster negotiations in order to resolve conflicts and help reach a point to build a sustainable peace. In fact, on that note, we are tracking further breaking developments this hour. At the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer will be visiting India on the 8th and 9th of October. Yes, this visit will mark PM Starmer's first visit to India. As per the Ministry of External Affairs, during the visit on the 9th of October in Mumbai, the two Prime Ministers will take stock of progress in diverse aspects of the India-UK Comprehensive Strategic Partnership in line with Vision 2035. The visit will also provide a valuable opportunity to reaffirm the shared vision of India and the UK to build a forward-looking partnership. Siddharth Regge joins us for more on this story. Siddharth, this is a key visit that will help strengthen India-UK ties further.
Absolutely, Uday. This is going to be a significant visit, mainly because it's going to be Keir Starmer's first visit to India after the India-UK free trade agreement was signed. Also, it comes as, Donald Trump has obviously hiked the fee for H-1B visas. So there's going to be a lot of, interest and attention on whether Keir Starmer, provides that opportunity and an alternative to India as well. So this is going to be a very, very significant visit, 2 days from October 8th to October 9th, where the UK Prime Minister will be in India, his first visit to the country ever since the free trade agreement was signed with it.
All right, appreciate you joining us with those updates. Siddharth, let's slip into a short break on that note.